looking back at the Cavs game, why that was a championship response for the Celtics. And let's take stock of the East. Are the Cavs the biggest challengers to the Celtics right now? It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Yup. Beantown, be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Back to back, if I say it, it's stamped. Locked on number 19, the best one, the next one. Juice loose in your pool now for the next run. It's the C's, who else could it be? What they gon' say now? Screaming like JT, Karalis, recap the madness. Every game, every practice. Best daily pod, no cap like Brad Beckett. Clutch like Drew to KP, tap in daily. Primetime dapping D White on the sideline. Raining Jace, how it started, raising business, how we finish. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. It's right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day, and I got you covered every Monday through Friday, plus bonus podcasts when they do play on the weekends. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast. Watch the show on YouTube. Let me know what you're thinking about the Celtics, the NBA belt-holding Boston Celtics. I'm John Karalis. I've been covering this team for about 20 years now, doing it as a beat writer for Boston Sports Journal and the author of Built Different, a book celebrating banner 18 as the Celtics chase 19. It's on johnkaralis.com for $30 delivered to your door in the United States. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We'll talk more about Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown from that Cavs game. We'll talk about the Cavs as contenders. There's a little bit of a change at the top of the East that a little different than what we expected. And we're going to talk about that championship response. We're going to do it with Tom Westerholm coming to us from, I'm going to make this appropriate, timely, the Westerholm wing of his sprawling estate. I say that because the Celtics will be visiting the West Wing and the White House on Thursday. So this is
sprawling. Definitely. That describes the type of place that I live in for sure.
Sprawling acreage, full of
almost 1,000 square feet it covers. So
I mean, that's sprawling.
Yes.
Indeed. Or crawling. I don't know. Maybe is that more Tom, well, welcome back. It was always nice to chat with you. So the first bullet point here, championship response. I think this is in response to when I saw Jayson Tatum and just kind of looking back at the game and looking at the TNT post game, like, oh wow, what a great response you guys had. This is a huge game. So we get prisoners of the moment a little bit. We hype this up like, wow, what a big game. It's the Cavs. It's a 15-0 Cavs, an NBA Cup game. Woohoo. This was, you guys, it took a lot for you guys to come back. And Jason's like, yeah, we've been in big games before. So I think the question here is like, the Celtics as champions, having been through everything, I feel like that kind of plays into like, 21-point lead went down to 2. Not a problem. I didn't see any hint of frantic in that moment. They were just like, maybe they weren't executing great on offense, but they just kept on going and kept on working. And this is the type of response that we've always been looking for. Like I think in the past, they've started to get like, oh, well, Jaylen's got to do it. Jason's got to do it. They get a little too, and this was like, no problem. Let's just, we can stop it at some point and we'll just answer.
Right. Which I think they've to your point, right? They've learned how to do that over the course of many, many, many big games that they've been in, big failures that they've failed and big W's that they've won, right? They've done all of it. They've learned how to bounce back from their failures. They've learned how to carve out wins in their big moments. I think the interesting thing to me about that, right, is like that the Celtics really tried to downplay the importance of that game in the lead up to it, which, like, of course they did, right? It's a regular season game. But then when they get out there, you can tell that it does matter. It is a game that matters to them. They wanted, I mean, the defense in the first half was obviously significantly better than we've seen.
Much better.
Yeah. Like, it's like, yeah, like you and I have been talking extensively on this podcast, right? About like, yeah, they're gonna like, they're gonna like pulling back just a little bit, like, or they're not trying as hard as they could. And it's like, they would deny that, of course, but then you see the evidence and it's like, yeah, we kind of told you there. But like, I think but that's also kind of natural, right? Like that you're going to have those responses, and that it's also natural that yesterday's game meant a little bit more to them. Like, I'm sorry, it just isn't the same playing the Raptors as it is playing the 15-0 Cavaliers. Like, it does feel a little bit different in an NBA Cup game. Like, the NBA put these kind of sort of artificial, like all this kind of semi-artificial meaning behind it, but then backed it up with some money, and it does matter. Yesterday's game did matter a little bit, and that kind of speaks to not only like, okay, like the Celtics tried a little harder, but also like why one of the reasons why they were successful in it is because they have played in so many of those games that do matter. They are used to it, so it's a good thing that it mattered. It's a good thing that they had this regular season game that meant a little bit more, because hey, they're very prepped for this moment. The NBA Finals meant way more, but you talk about like prisoner of the moment. We're not prisoners of the moment. We're present in this moment where this is a big game, and they won it, and they looked really good doing it. So yeah, I just thought it was like all around a pretty successful night. And I also think that it's fine that the Celtics pretended that it didn't matter, and it's also fine that it did matter more than they acted.
It's funny because you watch the that NBA documentary that they did about the Celtics championship, and Al Horford's narrating, and like they're saying after the fact, they're saying like certain games last year, they're like, this did bother us. The exactly. Warriors loss did bother us, but they weren't so bothered by the Denver Nuggets loss. When everybody on the outside was like, oh my God, they internally were like, oh man, we lost that game, but Denver hit some BS and we missed some really good looks. And that's, they felt fine about that, but they didn't feel fine about certain other performances. In the moment, they're like, it's just another game. And like, if the Celtics win a championship this year or whatever happens at the end, you can go back and ask Al Horford or something like, hey, that game against the Cavs when they were 15-0, he'd be like, yeah, we wanted it a little bit more. And that is natural, right? It's hard to explain, but when you're playing a game and you're playing against a team where you're like, we are so much better than them, there is a natural kind of like, it's not that you're not trying hard, that you're not thinking you're not trying hard, but the way you're trying is different. You carry yourself differently against an opponent where you're like, not a big deal. Like a boxer, it's like Muhammad Ali when he knew he was better, then he's like shuffling his feet and blah, 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 and making his faces and all that stuff. And you're like, is he taking this seriously? Like, he doesn't have to take it as seriously as like some of the other fights.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's a little bit of that natural thing that you'd love for them not to have, but like the Hawks hurt all those teams, like without Trae Young, they're like, yeah, we got this.
Yeah.
And like, we got burned by it. Like, damn it. And at the end, you're like, man, I can't believe we couldn't pull that out. But yeah, the Cavs 15-0, like afterwards, Derek White was like, we were aware.
We knew.
We knew. Yeah, we knew. Yeah. Of course, it was the way he said, we knew. Like, yeah, everybody in there knows. They're all super, super competitive. But yeah, it does mean a little bit more. I don't think the cup means a damn thing to them, but it does mean a little bit more to go out there. And it's not about showing the league, like Al Horford said. It's not about showing the league. The league knows what the Celtics are, but it's about just like in the moment being like, just a little asserting your dominance, just a little bit of like the big dog, the alpha dog walking into the park and just like, it's a little nip here or there, be like, everybody knows that I'm the one that runs this yard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, look with the Cavaliers, right? You're talking about another pretty big dog. Like we're not going to talk about how that's another. So it's like two big dogs playing tug of war. And yeah, like the other big dog, maybe gained some ground on it, but then the Celtics were like, nah. Like we've been here. We know how to do this. Like, I can't think of a good dog analogy, but it's like, they just, they,
something with Rottweilers.
Something with I was picturing Rottweilers. Yeah, that was
because they're the best.
They are big dogs. But yeah, no, I think that's kind of apt, right? It's like the Cavaliers were able to put up a genuine fight, and the Celtics were able to say, nope, like this is Like, this isn't even in the top 10 of our biggest games this calendar year. It's a big game, but it's not in our top 10 right now. So like, it just gives you that extra level of calm, that extra level of like, and with that level of calm, I think you're talking about them not being frantic. It comes back to kind of attention to detail. And that's something that obviously Joe Mazzulla preaches all the time, but that attention to detail, I think, is where you really see the teams who have already been there before. They're able to kind of like focus in and take the proper steps. And that's what we saw from the Celtics, I think.
And I think it's what we didn't see from the Cavs. And this is why let's talk about the Cavs being the biggest challenger. And the one thing, I actually think this could be a really good teaching moment for the Cavs. It's almost like the Celtics inadvertently were like, hey, if you want to challenge us, here's the lesson for you. We'll talk about that.
Darius Garland. Okay, sorry.
We'll talk about that when we come back. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. You know, it's the place to go for getting these last minute tickets, but any kind of tickets that you want. Game Time is going to get you into a game. So maybe you said, I do want to go see that Cavs game. Or maybe you're in DC and you're like, hey, let's go see if we can catch the Celtics and the Wizards Friday. A lot of those games will be on the secondary market too. So a lot of those tickets. So go check it out. Download the Game Time app. Use the Game Time Picks filter, the Game Time's Picks feature to filter out the fluff so you get incredible deals on great seats. Again, sports, comedy, music, all of that stuff. It's a curated experience to help save you more on all of that stuff. You toggle all in pricing. You turn that feature on. You get that total that you're going to pay up front with no surprise fees. The panoramic view is in there on the app so you can see what you're going to see before you buy the ticket. And they'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find those tickets somewhere else somehow. That means you get the lowest price guarantee and the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON-NBA. Locked On NBA. You can see it on the bottom of the screen on the YouTube page. $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON-NBA. For $20 off, download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Make sure you're signed up for the Locked On Celtics newsletter. It's daily. It's one-stop shopping there for Ultimate Team League and fantasy coverage. Sign up for free now, LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com to start your day with the all-new Locked On Celtics team newsletter. All right, Tom, the Celtics taught the Cavs a lesson, and we're looking at the Cavs people after the game like, oh, sign me up for a full series of this. And I think in the early going here, we're about 20% through the season, so still plenty of time. But the Bucks maybe are, I don't know, I don't want to say turning a corner, but they're at least not in a free fall. The Sixers,
they're not losing every game anymore.
They're not losing it. The Sixers are. The Sixers are losing every game. So we'll see what happens. They're still not healthy. I'm not writing either of those teams off. I am starting to put my pen to paper on the Sixers to start writing them off, but I haven't written anything yet. The Bucks, we'll see. But the Knicks, I think I've always said the Knicks need time because of when the Karl-Anthony Towns trade happened. The Cavs have asserted themselves. They've built this lead in the East. I think even if other teams turn it around, as long as the Cavs play at a reasonable pace, obviously not winning 15 of every 16, but like now if you win 75% of your games moving forward, you get there. I think they're going to solidify themselves in the top two. Are they a worthy challenger? Here's what I said before the break. The Celtics taught them a lesson. I think after the game, you heard the Cavs talk about we isolated too much. We got away from our game. I think they came in and saw this big game, big stage, big proving ground, and they reverted back to old habits. The Celtics leaned on their championship habits. They didn't go back to their old habits way before. They leaned on their championship habits. The Cavs said, oh, crap, we're going to ISO. Oh, God, they're throwing us in the Miyashita. ISO, which worked, but also didn't do enough to they could have taken a lead and they didn't. They probably needed to take more 3-pointers, but they didn't. They just kept attacking that isolation. I think the Cavs can look back on this game and be like, hey, there's a big lesson here. Stick to what you do. The Celtics stuck to what they do and they won. And they are incredibly unselfish. They did have injuries, but they got away from their unselfish play. They went a little too ISO heavy. Donovan Mitchell tried to dominate that game. And what do you get? Same result as the playoffs. Tight game, spots where the Celtics look dominant, and spots where the Celtics were able to close the door. So are the Cavs the biggest challenger now? They might end up being the biggest challenger because they looked the Celtics in the eyes. They failed again the same way they failed before. And I think they have an honest moment with themselves. They'd be like, do what we do and we'll be in better shape.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. I also think that one of the reasons the Cavaliers are the best challenger is because like their star guard, like their superstar guard is not a turnstile defensively. And like I think that matters so much against the Celtics that like Donovan Mitchell is not just food anytime the Celtics go at him. And like there isn't that automatic mismatch that the Celtics get against so many other teams where they're just like, all right, well, we're going to pick on you now for a while. And I think one of the problems for the Cavs is that Darius Garland is that guy and does matter quite a bit to the Cavs. So I think that's the thing that I don't know. If I was a person in the Cavs orbit, I haven't watched every single, I've watched some, I haven't watched every single Cavs game this year. I can't, but like, and I know Darius Garland has had, good stretch recently, but like, if you're talking about the Celtics as kind of your, I don't know, as kind of the team that you're trying to leapfrog, I think having Garland in the role that he's in is tough because you can't bring him off the bench. You can't do that, but he's better suited for that against the Celtics. Like you're better, and obviously they had injuries, like you said, but like you're better suited putting out a bunch of like guys who can defend multiple positions and who like, again, aren't just going to be target practice for whichever of the Jays gets the pick and roll to work out in his way. Like, I don't know. That's all that said. I think that the Cavaliers are in a better position than several teams. Like, I mean, for one thing, obviously their record, but then also because their top two guys, right, are Mitchell and Mobley, who is really, really impressive defender. He's a really good player. And that puts them in a nice position, I think.
So this plays right into everything that I always say about Celtics challengers, which is, yes, the Cavs have established themselves as maybe the biggest threat to the Celtics. I'm willing to listen
with a small. Let's give Giannis his respect and say maybe him,
right?
If they get it together, kind of asterisk. There,
you can do the asterisk and then the plus sign. It was like giving Giannis his respect and giving the Knicks time to figure it out. Like that stuff. But in this moment, after 16 games, 17 games, right now, the Cavs have been like, okay, we've planted our flag. Come get us. We are on that course to meet the Celtics in the conference finals. But the same thing that I've said about these other challengers, the Bucks, the Sixers, the Knicks, the Cavs have places that they can be attacked. The Celtics, generally speaking, do not. If you see Nemish Keita out there in a playoff series, something's gone wrong.
Something has gone wrong.
Yeah. And like that changes the calculus. But also, I don't think you see, if that game was played on April 1st or May 1st, I should say, I don't think you get a full 7 minutes in the third quarter of Keita. Even if Joe Mazzulla says, let's try it, after he gets targeted and blown by 3 times and it doesn't work, he's coming out. You're playing more Al Horford minutes. You're trying something else. You're saying, okay, Jayson, you're going to be our center here for a few minutes until we can get Al Horford back in. You're going to have to handle this.
You might even break glass in case of emergency and put Xavier Tillman.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion. But like he's just not a rim protector, and the Celtics are just bleeding points in the paint.
For sure.
So I think that's why Keita is getting all of these minutes. Even Luke Cornett's not playing.
Yeah.
And we're talking about him starting. Yeah. So I just think that they're going with the better rim protector, the bigger threat at the rim. But regardless, when the Celtics are whole, who do you attack defensively? Nobody. You can't.
No.
Even off the bench, like you got to wait for Pritchard to come in, and even then, you got to work at it. You got to wait for Hauser.
You got to have some size too. Like it's not like Donovan Mitchell is going to be able to just go at Peyton Pritchard with ease. Like that doesn't.
Right. That's not going to happen. You're going to try to post him up, and like then the Celtics are going to be like, fine, post up twos, fine. Right? Like Hauser, you want to post Hauser up and try to go twos? You're bleeding the clock. We can go out there and shoot threes with those two guys. We're fine trading 3 for 2, not a big deal.
And if you shoot 48% on that shot, that's like every one of those misses that you shoot is going to end up in like a fast break on the other end. So like
that's right. Yeah. But the Cavs need Darius Garland because he's been playing at a really high level up until this game. This was an outlier performance for him, but also a typical performance against the Celtics.
Yeah,
that's right.
This is a bad matchup for him.
That's right. And so this is why, Cavs biggest challenger? Sure. Do I sound like an arrogant jerk when I say, but I still put the Celtics easily above all of these other teams? Not because I don't respect the Cavs. I just look at Darius Garland in every pick and roll. Look at these guys. They're going to attack that every single time. And unless something catastrophic happens to this lineup, that's going to be where they go. Garland's not going to be able to respond on the other end. He historically has not been able to be that defensive target and then respond on the other end. And so maybe this is how all of the games go, but it could be another 5-game series where it's like tight. So that's just how I see it right now.
And this is exactly why we kept saying throughout the entire summer, we kept saying the Pacers were the hardest series the Celtics had, because like the Mavericks had all these holes. Like they had more than the Cavaliers do, right? Like they had more opportunities to attack people. And the Pacers, the reason the Pacers were so much harder for the Celtics is because they didn't have that guy that you could just I guess Halliburton, but like when he got hurt, it kind of a little bit. Like
it's like Trae Young getting hurt.
Yeah, it's like, oh no. But I think that's why they were the hardest team, is because they were harder to target. And the Celtics, they love a good target.
They love
a good target.
They decimate good targets. Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown decimate good targets. Let's talk about their performance.
Talking about,
that's how we let's end with Tatum and Brown. Give them the appropriate amount of love for what they did, especially at the end of the game. We'll talk about that next. Today's show is brought to you by Chime. We've all been in those positions. Like I know earlier in my career, when I was at First in television, the money was not exactly rolling in. So I've had a couple of overdrafts. I've had a couple of, financial iffy moments. And Chime would have helped because they allow for you to have no monthly fees, no maintenance fees. You can get spotted on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. You have a fee-free overdraft up to $200. It's just a way to kind of help you get through a couple of those rough spots. I know that I've been there, and this would have helped. It's time to get serious about your finances. Maybe you want to save for a big purchase. Maybe you just realized what your credit score can do. Maybe you want to pay off some debt. You can do that all with Chime. They've got over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Like I said, no monthly fees. No maintenance fees. Stupid, right? Maintenance fees, monthly fees for not having money. Charging you for not having money is stupid. Make your fall finances a little greener by working towards your financial goals with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That's chime.com/NBA. Chime feels like progress. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On NBA, 2 Locked On NBA podcasts now. Locked On Game Night 7 days a week. I'm there on Fridays with Jake Madison, covering every game in the NBA that night. Then Locked On NBA during the week, Monday through Friday, covering the big stories, discussing the big stories, the big storylines. So find both on the Locked On NBA feed, wherever you get Locked On Celtics. All right, let's get back to the conversation here with Tom. Obviously Jayson Tatum had a big game. I said last night that this was a nice like reminder, not that it's a sign that Jaylen Brown does this, like he's been doing this for a while now, but sometimes it's just nice to see Jaylen have a 41% shooting night and still lock down defensively and still be able to come through with some huge finishes. That spinning, swooping layup at the end of the game was an incredible elite finish. What a finish that was. His ability as he's grown as a player to compartmentalize has been huge. And, you know, I think that's maybe like he's grown in so many ways. I'm very incredibly impressed with Jaylen Brown's progression as a player. The fact that he doesn't let an early tough shooting night impact his defense. He doesn't sit there glassy-eyed getting cut back door like he used to earlier in his career.
Yeah.
To see that, and again, that hasn't happened for a while, but sometimes in these big games, like you see that and you're like, wow, this is elite. This is why Jaylen was finals MVP and why he's risen to the level of a guy that you can count on, is because he puts that stuff behind him. And down the stretch, yeah, Jayson was doing his thing, and we'll talk about him, but Jaylen did his thing down the stretch too. And that was a very impressive. It's weird to say, oh, it was impressive to see how he played when he didn't shoot well, but that's always kind of like that. Putting that stuff behind you and coming through is big.
Yeah, I mean, he's talked about how he makes his money, getting to the rim now, and like, and I'm in those situations, right? Especially after the Celtics went on their huge tear and like they had cooled off, and you're seeing them like not quite as still making some big threes, but not and certainly not as hot as they were in the first half. Like to have that guy who can get downhill and make that swirling, twirling, jelly layup that he two of them, right? Like two big drives and finishes that really, I mean, kind of, like they had a huge role in putting the game away. Like, yeah, I think you're right. I think that's one of the biggest areas of growth. That's one of the biggest reasons that, I mean, and honestly, having a second guy like that is one of the biggest reasons the Celtics are champions, right? Like that Jaylen is kind of, I'm not going to say he's like unaffected. I don't think that's true. I think that's overstating it a little bit, but it's like the fact that he has learned to compartmentalize is a good word for it. That he has kind of figured out how to just kind of let things roll off him a little bit better than we've seen in the past is really important. And I mean, it certainly helps Tatum, right? Because like you got Tatum going crazy. He's got a ton of points, ton of assists. He's the focal point of everything. And then, if you're the Cavaliers and you're trying to stop that, you're trying to stop all these 3-pointers, you're trying to, prevent them from just kicking the ball all around the court. And then here comes Jaylen Brown, like driving the ball, like straight down your throat. It's like, okay, like that's one thing too many to try to deal with. Like
that's right.
And I feel like that's kind of the Celtics' entire ethos, right? Is like one thing too many. Like
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. That sums it up perfectly. The Celtics are one thing too many, no matter what it is. You've got things covered. How many times have we seen, like in the fourth quarter, Jaylen? Like I thought early in the game, Jaylen was trying too hard on his drives. Like he was really trying. I am going to drive and I am going to score. And instead of I'm going to drive, make the right read, and whatever the right play is what it is. Fourth quarter, he starts making the right read. He had that drive to the Al Horford left, above the break three, where it's like, yeah, it's one thing too many. Jaylen Brown is driving. Oh my God, we got to collapse. Peyton Pritchard's in one corner. Sam Hauser's in the other corner. Derek White's up on the other 3-point. We've got to guard all those guys. Oh man, we forgot about Al Horford. And Al Horford drills the three, right?
And it's not even necessarily forgetting about, right? It's like we've been compromised to a permanent end. Like this is it.
That's right. The drive to set up Jayson Tatum, like Tatum is in the corner, which they're doing a lot more now. Jaylen drives, he draws 3. Jayson Tatum gets the ball in the corner. Now he's alone in the corner.
Yeah.
And now there goes Evan Mobley flying out. Tatum up fake. Boom. Now Jaylen has compromised the defense by drawing 3. You still have shooters all over the floor. Now you have Tatum with the ball and a defender going, oh, crap. And then he drives baseline, gets an easy dunk. It's a 2-point game and you give up a Jayson Tatum dunk? Like that's that's everything that you're talking about there. And the fact that both of these guys are playing at that level, like I love what Jayson said after the game, where he's like, we don't do anything spectacular.
Mhm.
That's not who we are. And I think people want the spectacular all the time because that gives you those little feelings of like, oh my God. And you share it all over social media. Like, oh, did you see what Giannis did? Giannis went from free throw line to the opposite end with one dribble, like probably a travel, but we're like those spectacular stuff. Jayson's like, we don't do that. We just try to do the right thing as often as we can. And we're really good at doing it a lot. And it's like, yeah, that plus what you said, having one guy, there's always going to be one guy. If they do that, the simple stuff all the time, there's always going to be that one guy that's the beneficiary. And sometimes it's Tatum and Brown, but sometimes they're the ones that are creating that chaos.
Yep.
I think that fourth quarter, that performance last night, Tatum and Brown creating that chaos gets to that one thing too much. And it was Al Horford in the fourth quarter. And, Derek White hits that huge shot and Pritchard hits that huge shot on the Tatum baseline drive, Euro step kick out to the top right break. Like that stuff is where the Celtics are just too much.
And I think that's where, if you're a Celtics fan and you want to make a Jayson Tatum MVP argument, I think that's where the strongest one stems from, right?
Yeah.
Is where it's like, okay, great. He's got the stats. He's starting to get, this year he's got kind of the requisite stats to be like kind of actually in that conversation. You could have made the case previous years, but not nearly as strong without kind of the big scoring stats and everything. And he's got that this year. But I think the fact that he is so often the catalyst of the Celtics having guys who are one thing too many, like he starts that. So much of the time he creates that situation where, yeah, Derek White is just a bridge too far for you to try to cross, where all of a sudden Drew Holiday's getting the three in the corner. And even if it is Tatum with the hockey assist, even if he's not the guy who initially made that pass, it's the fact that he drew the defenders. It's the fact that you don't have somebody who can stay in front of him one-on-one. You don't have somebody who can switch onto him in a pick and roll and contain him. So much of the time, that's him. And I think that's where a lot of the MVP stuff can kind of stem from. If you're having that conversation this early in the season, that's why he's been a genuine MVP candidate so far.
Yeah, I think that sums it up really well. I don't know if he's going to win it.
Yeah,
because people are focused on other things, but you're right. That's
because Nikola Jokic exists, and it's like it's tough. It's like, yeah, you're a superstar in the era of Michael Jordan. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah,
sorry.
Jokic is pretty good at a lot of things.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Tom, appreciate you as always, my man.
Appreciate you, man.
And I always appreciate you, the listener, the viewer, however you're consuming this podcast. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that comes by and says hi at the arena. Even those of you who just yell at me from like 2 sections away. That's always fun too. So thank you for coming by to say hi. Please do that as often as you'd like. I love the fact that you are listening. I love the fact that you're watching on YouTube. Get into that comment section. Share your comments, share your thoughts about everything we talked about the team and all of that. And then share the podcast with your friends, with your family, with perfect strangers who just happen to be wearing Celtics gear. Just go up to them and tell them that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.